Welcome to this tactical analysis of the Arsenal versus Chelsea game in the Women's Super League. We're going to have a look at how Arsenal split their centre-backs during their deep midfield build-up, a little bit at their press and how Chelsea struggled to pass through it, then moving on to Chelsea and their early balls to Kerr, and lastly, their late tactical tweaks. So looking at the scenario in the 14th minute, we've got a Chelsea throw-in with Arsenal, as they did throughout the match, pressing intensely. Eidevall electing to use Marnham's energy and her defensive IQ high up to reduce efficacy of Chelsea's deep build-up. This being in a 4-4-2 pressing shape with one of their centre midfielders being able to push up higher whilst the other one anchors. In this case, Walty's a little bit higher with Little being deeper. Millie Bright had sought to clear/float the ball into this left-hand side space for the likes of Fleming, Wrighton and Kerr to contest, but it's easily won here by the front foot defending of Wainwright and co, who's then able to retreat back to Zinsberger. I think it's a good point to just mention here how Zinsberger was really useful pushing out to allow the centre-backs to be able to split, but also she was good at doing this sweeping role, which was especially significant in preventing Kerr being able to get in behind from early Chelsea long balls. Liam Charles's header goes back to the Chelsea back line and they're able to set up into their 2-3 deep midfield shape, again with Zinsberger pushing up out of the penalty area, allowing the centre-backs to be able to split. This being against Chelsea's 4-4-2, so pressing in a similar shape to Arsenal. So we see a clearer image of that 2-4 or 2-3 deep midfield shape against the 4-4-2 Chelsea press. And with the centre-backs being able to split as much as they have, that allows Williamson to be able to run up this right-hand side. This also allows the full-backs for Arsenal to be able to push up, allowing the wide midfielders for Arsenal to be able to tuck inside, especially here with Hurtig. And then with Leah Williamson's passing ability, she's able to play those long balls into Blackstenius or out wide or through the lines into Hurtig. And we can see how much of a conundrum this is here for Eriksson, who has to be positioned such that she can, one, press into Hurtig and she can also go out wide. Leah Williamson's pass is on the money, but it goes through her legs for Ketlin Ford to be able to attack far side. Moving on to the 34th minute, we've got that 2-3 or 2-4 deep build up again. The Arsenal goalkeeper again allowing those centre-backs to be able to split further and reduce the efficacy of that press. Here, I just want to point out Walty's position because Arsenal did this a lot more as the game went by, where instead they played this 3-1 shape with Little as the CDM. Marnham also sometimes could drop to become a second centre midfielder here, with Walty pushing into left back. This allows your fullbacks on both sides to be able to push higher up. And you should be getting a sense of deja vu here with Leah Williamson splitting into that right hand side channel, being able to drive up with Blackstenius centrally, Hurtig inside, and your fullback pushing up, and she's able to whip that ball into Blackstenius. Unfortunately for Arsenal, Buchanan's proactive defending is able to prevent the pass here, and with Hurtig kind of caught on her back heels, this allows Eriksson to be able to get the ball, and she immediately plays a long ball into that left hand side channel, potentially to start a counter attack or as an evasive manoeuvre. Speaking of evasive manoeuvres or long balls, a key tactic for Chelsea often is the early through ball into Sam Kerr. And so we see here as Arsenal's attack breaks down, Guru Wrighton looks to immediately play Sam Kerr in behind as somewhat of a defensive or offside trap skill check. I say that Chelsea typically try and do this in every game they play, where they're trying to force the game into a phase where the opponent needs to commit into Chelsea's half, creating more space for Kerr, which Chelsea inevitably exploits. And so I've got another example here with Ketlin Ford able to release Catley down this left-hand side, who whips in across. It's defended by Bright and then further cleared by Fleming to beat the Arsenal counter-press. James is able to get the clearance under control and immediately looks to release Sam Kerr in behind for another of those defensive offside trap skill checks. And as I mentioned, Zinsberger was just really good at this, rushing off her line to sweep in behind and prevent Sam Kerr from being able to capitalise. Okay, so we've got Chelsea building up deep again in their typical 2-3 shape or 4-1 shape with your fullbacks deep and Ingle sitting just ahead of them. You can have Cuthbert sometimes drop in here as well. This being against the 4-4-2 shape that Arsenal were pressing in, with one of your centre midfielders, on this occasion Walty, being deeper and Little pushing higher up. And then the near-sided fullback for Arsenal, on this occasion Voinreuter, is going to be looking to track Wrighton or Fleming in this right-hand side channel for Arsenal. I should say that Chelsea did alternate this, where they could have Fleming on this left-hand side push higher up and essentially play with a back three with Eriksen as the third centre-back, with Liam Charles here on this right-hand side in more of a right midfield position and Guru Wrighton as a left midfield. Here, Guru Wrighton is dropped but is tracked doggedly by Weinreuter, preventing her from being able to advance in any sort of controlled manner. That allows Kim Little to be able to play a nice controlled pass into Hurtig and then into Mead to start Arsenal's counter-attack. Unfortunately for Arsenal, this counter-attack breaks down, I believe, off Mead's next choice to pass into Hurtig rather than Blackstenius. But the reason that I showed this scenario was because of the difficulty that Chelsea had in building up from deep, despite passing typically on their stronger left-hand side. And so we see essentially the same thing again in this scenario in the 73rd minute, with Millie Bright's long pass here into Guru Wrighton dropping, being prevented again by a dogged Weinreuter, which then allows Hurtig herself and Mead to be able to counter-attack on this right-hand side. And next, in this 28th minute scenario, I kind of just wanted to show Chelsea looking to isolate their wide midfielder versus an Arsenal fullback after getting a little bit lucky in their deep build-up from Musovic's poor clearance / long ball. It looked like she was trying to get the ball out to either James or Liam Charles, who pushed beyond James, but instead her pass skewed into Ford, who was unable to use one of her first two touches to pass it straight back into Mead centrally. Fortunately for Chelsea, Charles and the rest of her defence are able to switch the ball out towards their left-hand side and force Arsenal into retreating, eventually setting up into a 2-4 shape, which, as mentioned, alternatively could be a back three with Eriksen deeper, which would then draw Guru Wrighton deeper on this left-hand side, allowing Liam Charles to be able to push up into the right midfield shape. Again, we have here Mead and Blackstenius as a pair working to try and negate passes into the Chelsea midfield. The Chelsea midfield, which was typically anchored by Ingle, with Cuthbert being allowed to roam a little bit higher. The Chelsea defence here combined with Ingle to be able to play a ball through the lines into Fleming, but on other occasions they would use Bright to be able to switch the ball out into those wide spaces, looking to take advantage of the 4-4-2 being narrow to allow one of their wide midfielders to be able to dribble up the wing. I just want to point out here Weinreuter kind of cheating defensively, because instead of staying relatively narrow with her centre-back to mark the player she should be defending, she's expecting the switch out here into Wrighton, and she's already gambled to go there. So Ingle passing inside instead catches her out defensively. And then from there, Fleming is able to connect with Kerr, but Kerr doesn't feel comfortable using her left foot to switch the ball out here into James, which takes a lot of the steam out of the attack. Although eventually the ball does get into James and she's able to drive her way into the Arsenal penalty box. And Arsenal were really good, not just at pressing, but also working as a unit defensively. On this occasion, with Walty dropping back to double up against the wide midfielder, but typically Ford or Hurtig would come back and support their fullback. Fortunately, James's cross is defended. And lastly, Emma Hayes appears to have adjusted her tactics late on to do a number of things, such as adjusting the press to more of a 4-1-3-2, so more aggressive, with Kirby playing as a CAM and Cuthbert anchoring. But then also, when Chelsea were in possession, they allowed James to come into more of a central area, with Perisset holding the width on the right hand side as a wide midfielder. And then also from throw-in specifically, they pushed Millie Bright into a second centre forward position. So we see from the second throw-in here, eventually Kirby's able to play that ball out into Perisset on this right hand side. And again, just as we mentioned with Weinreuter, I think it's good to mention the positioning of the fullback here. Catley has stayed with her player, and so this creates distance that allows Chelsea's attack to maintain a head of steam here on this right hand side and force the Arsenal defence to retreat, eventually leading to a whipped ball into the box, wherein Chelsea have better numbers and so better odds at winning the aerial contest. And of course, Kerr needs no invitation and knocks it in. And with that, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider sharing it on social media, maybe subscribing. And if you enjoy our WSL or Women's Champions League, Premier League content, please have a look at our playlist. And with that, we're out.